Welcome to another video about MODX. In other videos we explored the basics of the parser and cacheable tags, uncacheable tags and how to use them. In this video we're taking a little bit of a deeper dive into how the parser works and some cool things you can do with it as a site builder. The MODX parser is responsible for processing your templates. It will start processing at the top and work its way down. Anytime it encounters the square brackets, it enters a new level of parsing. When it encounters the closing brackets that belong to the same tag, it will process the tag for you and insert its result in its place. It will then go back to parsing the level above it. This means that parsing happens inside out. If there is a tag inside of a tag, the inner tag will get processed first because that's the first match between an opening and a closing tag that it finds. The parser runs through the content multiple times, as long as it finds new tags to process. By default this goes up to a limit of 10 levels deep. This limit is configurable, however, even if you have really complex use cases and you're using content blocks a lot, you should rarely hit even the third level of parsing. If you hit more than 3 levels, you might want to look at optimizing some logic that's going on, rather than increasing the parsing nested limit. As we discussed in the basic caching video, the parser only starts by processing cache tags. It then writes the result of those cache tags into your cache, and then it will finally process anything that's uncached. So this is important to keep in mind. From a purely technical perspective, this isn't entirely accurate. However, as a site builder, this is what you should know. This is what you need to keep in mind when you're building anything more complex than a basic template. This is what will help you to effectively implement the parser and understand some of the quirks that are unique to MODX. The way the parser works gives you some interesting side effects that you can use to your benefit, especially when it comes to nesting tags that get processed inside out. For example, we could use this to generate tags from other tags. For example, if we have a footer chunk, which may have some different variations that you want to select on a per page level, you could use the template variable footer type and use that to generate a footer tag, which might, for example, be a full footer or a mini footer, depending on what you're trying to accomplish. In this case, we're using a template variable, but you can use any resource fields like resource alias, the parent context, and so on to add a dynamic variation of your footer. The parser will first replace the inner tag, so the footer type template variable in our example, which then gives it another tag for the footer to use, so the footer full or the footer mini chunk tags. This can be a very simple way to set up and maintain conditional elements on your page. Things that might be slightly different depending on where it is on your site. So if you find yourself adding multiple very similar conditional output filters or if snippets, this is something you may want to consider to see if you can sort of encapsulate that logic into different variations. Let's look at another slightly more complex example where we want to conditionally run a different snippet based on the value of a TV. We might use, for example, the if snippet like you can see here, where we're comparing the TV template variable to 1. If it is 1, we run the snippet called snippet, and if it's not 1, we execute the snippet called else. The problem here is that the inner tags are getting processed first. So we take advantage of that for the subject in the snippet call. However, both the snippet and the other snippet will get processed before this conditional is evaluated. So if, for example, the snippet will send a redirect, or if it has any side effects, or if it does a lot of heavy processing, that means that processing is always getting done before the outer conditional is processed. That's a waste of resources, or it might have side effects that you do not want. What we can do to fix that is move the brackets out. The same is true if instead of the if snippet you use conditional output filters. These two tags have the exact same effect, they do the exact same thing. It's just a preference if you want to use the if snippet or these conditional output filters. What we can do to fix this problem of the inner tags getting processed first is moving the brackets outside of the condition. Instead of having a fully formed tag in each of the potential outcomes, we put the conditional inside an extra layer of brackets. As you can see, the orange brackets in this case. This means that the first thing that gets processed is the inner tag, which is now the if snippet. And then once that's done processing, it will return either a clean snippet tag or the other tag, as indicated in orange. This means that the parser only processes our snippet after it evaluated the condition, which will be good for our performance and avoid any side effects in these snippets from sort of leaking out. Of course, we can also do this with the conditional output filter syntax, which gives us a slightly more condensed way of looking at this. Using tags to create other tags is known in the community as the mosquito syntax, which is a term coined by Jason Coward, core architect for MODX in 2014. If you want to take a trip down memory lane or just see how this was first introduced, you will find the link to that in the description below. With this syntax, you can still pass properties into the snippet as well. What you want to do is put them outside of the conditional. This way they will be added to both snippet tags, regardless of the condition. If you need different properties for each outcome, I would suggest using property sets to hold those. So using the add and then the name of the property set. Putting properties inside a conditional is technically possible, however, it is more error prone and the syntax can get really confusing really fast. We'll do a video on property sets in the future, so be sure to subscribe to the channel on YouTube and check modmore.com/video for an overview of all the videos we have published so far. Let's look at something else the parser can do for us as site builders, besides nesting tags, which is applying properties everywhere. Properties are most commonly applied to snippet tags, where you control how it works or how the output is generated, but properties are actually available on all types of tags that the MODX parser has. For example, maybe you have a footer chunk. The footer chunk is the last thing in your template, so that includes the ending HTML tag. That means you cannot put anything after it because it would generate invalid HTML. However, maybe you have some templates that still require some extra scripts or some extra functionality in the footer that you want to contain within that chunk. What you can do in that case is add a property to your footer chunk. In this case, we have our footer chunk and we add property scripts in which we can apply any sort of script tag or anything else that we want to include in there. In the chunk itself, we use the scripts placeholder to insert this code wherever we want it to go. Whether it's better to use a partial tag like we saw in an earlier example, or this trick to insert something else inside of the chunk, obviously depends on what you're trying to do. If you're making big changes to the structure, for example the full and the mini footer that we looked at earlier, using separate chunks will be easier to maintain. You'll just have separate variations that you can just manage as you need to. However, if you're toggling features on or off, or maybe you're inserting any arbitrary content like we're doing here with the scripts, then using properties saves you from having too many different variations that you need to separately update whenever there's some small thing you need to change. Another way to use properties is on a lexicon tag. So if you're building a multilingual website and you're using the lexicon system in MODX, you may have some strings, such as welcoming a user, where you need to insert something inside of the text itself. In that case, just like with the chunks, you can specify any any property on the tag, and it will be available as a placeholder inside of the string. Another interesting example is when you're using the link tag to generate the URL to a certain resource. You can also apply any property here, such as the from and the reason property where we're shown in this example, and those will be appended to the URL. That's, for example, useful when you're generating deep links to a certain section of the page, or if you're pre-filling form data, like on a contact page where you want to know where the visitor clicked on your help button, or what the reason is for contacting you. These are just some of the interesting things about MODX parser that you should know about when you're building templates with MODX. To learn more about MODX, make sure to check out the video on the right, as well as modmore.com/video for an overview of all the MODX tutorials and explainers that we've recorded for you. Have a good one, take care, and I'll see you on the next video.